The bright lights of Jimmy Kimmel Live shimmered against the polished stage floor as the audience erupted into applause. The band played energetically while Jimmy Kimmel flashed his signature grin. "Tonight," Jimmy announced confidently, adjusting his suit jacket, "we have a legend in the house. A comedy icon, the one and only Eddie Murphy." The crowd went wild. Eddie walked out smiling, dressed sharply in a tailored black suit. He waved casually, hugged Jimmy, and sat down. The energy felt electric, two comedy giants face to face. This was supposed to be television gold. At first, everything flowed smoothly. Jimmy brought up Eddie's early stand-up days, referencing Saturday Night Live, where Eddie became a breakout star in the 1980s. Old clips played on the screen, and the audience laughed at the nostalgia. Eddie chuckled, nodding respectfully. "So, Eddie," Jimmy said, leaning forward, "you've done it all. Stand-up movies, music? Is there anything left for you to conquer?" Eddie smiled calmly. "I'm just grateful to still be working, man." The audience applauded warmly. Then Jimmy's tone shifted slightly. "You know," he said with a smirk, "a lot of people still talk about your older stand-up specials. Some say comedy back then was, let's say, a little more dangerous." The crowd gave a mixed reaction. Laughter blended with tension. Eddie's smile thinned. Jimmy continued, "Do you ever look back and think, man, maybe I shouldn't have said that? Or are you still proud of all of it?" There it was, a subtle trap. The audience grew quieter. Cameras zoomed in. Eddie adjusted in his seat. "Comedy evolves. Times change," he replied carefully. "What mattered was that it was honest to that moment." Jimmy laughed lightly. "Sure, but some people online say you couldn't get away with that material today." The words hung in the air. Eddie's expression shifted, not angry but guarded. Jimmy pressed further. "Do you think you were too controversial back then? Or do you think comedians today are just too sensitive?" The tension became visible. Even the band members seemed still. Eddie leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. "Comedy isn't about getting away with something," he said evenly. "It's about connecting. If you lose that, you lose everything." The audience clapped, some nervously. Jimmy smiled again, but this time it felt forced. "Well, I guess Twitter might disagree with you," he joked. A few scattered laughs. Eddie didn't laugh. For a split second, silence dominated the studio. Jimmy glanced at his cue cards. "Speaking of Twitter, do you ever read what people say about you?" That question hit harder than expected. Eddie's jaw tightened almost invisibly. "Not really," he answered. "I focus on real life." The room felt colder. Something had shifted. Jimmy, sensing the tension but pushing anyway, delivered one more line, a joke referencing past controversies in a tone that bordered on mocking. The tension in the studio was now unmistakable. Jimmy attempted to recover. "Anyway, let's talk about your new project." But Eddie raised a hand gently. The movement was small, yet it silenced the entire room. "Jimmy," Eddie said quietly. The audience leaned in. "I came here to talk about my work. To celebrate what I'm doing now." Jimmy nodded, slightly uneasy. Of course. But instead," Eddie continued, his voice calm but firm, "we're circling around things from decades ago. Things people already debated, judged, and moved past." The silence deepened. Jimmy tried to laugh it off. "Hey, it's just comedy, right?" Eddie's eyes met his directly. "Exactly," he replied. The audience gasped softly. The exchange felt heavier than anyone expected. This wasn't playful banter anymore. This was personal. Jimmy shifted in his chair. "I didn't mean any disrespect." Eddie stood up. At first, people thought it was part of a bit, but Eddie didn't smile. "I've been doing this a long time," he said, "and I respect platforms like this. But respect goes both ways." A murmur spread across the crowd. Jimmy looked stunned. "Wait, Eddie." "I'm proud of my evolution," Eddie continued, "but I'm not here to be reduced to old headlines." The band members exchanged uncertain glances. Jimmy attempted damage control. "Let's reset." Eddie shook his head gently. "No reset needed. I just know when it's time." And with that, he stepped away from the couch. Gasps, whispers, shock. The cameras captured everything. Jimmy stood halfway, unsure whether to follow or stay seated. "Eddie, come on!" But Eddie kept walking. The audience didn't know whether to clap, stay silent, or protest. It felt surreal, like time slowed down. As Eddie reached the stage exit, he paused for just a moment. Without turning back, he said, "Comedy should lift people, not corner them." Then he disappeared backstage. The studio fell into complete silence. Jimmy remained standing, frozen. For the first time in years, the seasoned host looked completely unprepared. The band awkwardly played a soft riff, unsure what to do. Jimmy finally cleared his throat. "Well," he forced a laugh. "That was unexpected." But the audience wasn't laughing. The energy had shifted entirely. What was meant to be another viral late night moment had turned into something else, something raw. Jimmy shuffled his cue cards nervously. "Let's go to commercial," he said quickly. The cameras cut. But the damage was already done. Within minutes, clips from the show began circulating online. Eddie Murphy walks out. Jimmy Kimmel crossed the line? Live TV disaster. Social media exploded. Some defended Jimmy, saying it was just late-night humor. Others praised Eddie for standing his ground with dignity. By the next morning, entertainment headlines everywhere replayed the clip from Jimmy Kimmel Live on loop. Commentators debated whether Jimmy had pushed too far. Old interviews resurfaced. Think pieces emerged overnight. But what surprised many was Eddie's silence. He didn't tweet. He didn't issue a statement. Instead, he attended the premiere of his new film days later, smiling confidently on the red carpet. Reporters tried to provoke a reaction. "Eddie, what happened on Kimmel?" He simply replied, "Nothing happened. I just chose peace." That single sentence went viral. Meanwhile, Jimmy addressed the situation on his next show. Sitting alone at his desk, he looked more serious than usual. "Last week," he began, "things got uncomfortable." The audience listened closely. "My intention was never to disrespect Eddie Murphy. He's a legend. If it felt that way, I apologize." It was a rare moment of vulnerability. Some applauded his accountability. Others felt it came too late. Behind the scenes, insiders revealed that producers were caught completely off guard. Ratings for the episode spiked, but not for the reasons they'd hoped. Late-night television thrives on edgy humor, but there's a fine line between playful teasing and perceived disrespect. And that night, many believed the line had been crossed. Weeks later, the clip remained one of the most watched moments in late-night history. But what lingered most wasn't humiliation. It was contrast. Two comedians, two approaches. One kept pushing for a reaction. The other refused to give one. In the end, Eddie didn't need a punchline. His silence became the loudest statement of all. And Jimmy? He learned, on live television, that even the sharpest joke can sometimes cut too deep.